Thank you very much. And out front now, Democratic strategist, former media advisor to Howard Dean's presidential campaign, Steve McMahon, and Jonathan Ticini, a Bernie Sanders supporter. Okay, so let's get straight to this, Steve. You just heard how much money Hillary Clinton has gotten from Wall Street. I mean, these numbers are big, right? $6 million in donations, $3 million for speeches that she gave. That's almost $10 million. With numbers like that, can she make the argument that she would actually be tough on the banks?
Well, I mean, I think she did the best she could last night by basically using President Obama as a shield, pointing out that he raises money on Wall Street and has raised a lot of money himself there. And he was the one who's pushed these financial reforms. I also thought she scored some points by pointing out that Bernie Sanders voted to deregulate or defang the SEC and the regulatory agencies back in 2000. There is, though, Jeff Zeleny is absolutely right, there's a populist anger in the Democratic Party aimed at Wall Street, and this is something Bernie Sanders has done very effectively since the beginning of the campaign. The question really is whether he can move outside this lane and whether this lane will be sufficient. So far, it hasn't been.
And Jonathan, you know, one of the arguments she's making is actually one that Bernie Sanders is making, right? When it comes to guns, he's saying, look, I represented a state where people cared about their right to have a gun. Hillary Clinton was a senator from New York. It was her job to advocate for those constituents, many of whom are from Wall Street. So wasn't she just doing her job and doing it well, just like Bernie Sanders when he defends gun rights?
Well, I think Wall Street and the money that Hillary Clinton has taken is reflective of something bigger. So I want to answer the question, but I want to make two other points. And because it's Martin Luther King Day, I want to read something that Martin Luther King wrote. We must recognize that we can't solve our problem now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. This means a revolution of values and other things. The whole structure of American life must be changed. And on that stage last night, you saw one candidate who is urging a political revolution. That was Bernie Sanders. And Wall Street is a part of it. The other candidate, Hillary Clinton, represents the status quo. And putting aside the lies and misrepresentations on a whole host of issues, you can't ignore the fact that she is beholden to Wall Street. It's one thing to come from a state. It's another thing to basically be beholden to a whole industry that affects the whole economy. And I kind of laugh. It makes me think of the little saying, actually, I use this in a book title, that, you know, when it's raining, if you're peeing on my leg, don't tell me it's raining. And the fact is that when you take $600,000 from Goldman Sachs, there's a reason for that. They're buying your loyalty. If I send $31 to Hillary Clinton, and that's the average contribution that Bernie Sanders gets, if I sent that to her, and I called her up on the phone at 3 a.m. or whatever time she was available, she would not take my call if Goldman Sachs was on the other line. They will have more influence. They will shape the government and economic policy. That's just a fact. And look, I'm not saying anything that every single American knows. The system is corrupt.
So, all right, let me go to you then, Steve. I mean, what do you say when Jonathan says that? It is a very hard argument to refute. How does she refute that?
Well, I mean, I think what she does is what so many Democrats do, and she says, look, there's a campaign finance system that we all can find objectionable, but it's a campaign finance system that the Supreme Court put in place, and it's the one under which we operate. And if you're a senator from New York State, you're going to raise money in New York City and on Wall Street. If you're a Democrat, frankly, who runs for the United States Senate in a competitive race anywhere, you're going to raise money on Wall Street. Now, you can say that that's something that we should all object to and we should rebel against, and that's a perfectly legitimate position. But, you know, it's probably not enough to get Bernie Sanders the nomination. It's definitely not going to be enough on its own to get him the presidency. I mean, look where he is in the polls. He's 43%,
Steve,
43 points behind Hillary Clinton. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your point. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so
Steve,
South Carolina
let me make two.
Go ahead, Jonathan. We have a bit of a delay on that line, so go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, I apologize. So, Steve, 2 points. They're separate points. You're absolutely right. This is a corrupt system. But Bernie Sanders, in fact, has said he's not going to participate in that system. He won't have a super PAC funded by Wall Street and very rich billionaires. He is funding his campaign through small contributions, and he has proven that he can go toe-to-toe. It's 1 million people who are contributing. He will be competitive through the Super Tuesday primaries, those 11 or 12 states, because he will have enough money to go on the air. You don't have to sell yourself to Wall Street.
So, Steve, should Hillary Clinton say she won't take another dollar from Wall Street? Should she do that at this point, or would that just be disingenuous? Well, I mean, Steve, should she do it?
You know, yes, it's disingenuous, and it's not honest, but that would be within her kind of milieu, the way she does things. But I'm not suggesting it. Let's look at reality.
Okay.
Who are the people who surround her? Bernie Sanders says specifically, when he's elected president, he is not going to have people from Goldman Sachs, Citibank around him. One of Hillary Clinton's and Bill Clinton's closest friends, closest supporters, is Robert Rubin from Citibank. I mean, you could just go down the list. These are all part of the same elite.
Okay.
Bernie Sanders wants to basically change
Steve, you
the
get the final word.
Listen. Okay, this is a great argument for a very narrow sliver of the Democratic Party. It's not an argument on which presidencies are made. Anybody who watched the debate last night, and look, you know, Hillary Clinton has had her problems. Anybody who watched the debate last night saw a candidate in Hillary Clinton who demonstrated the breadth and depth of her knowledge on every issue, foreign policy, and on every domestic policy issue, and, you know, on gun control, where there's a legitimate disagreement. I thought she got the better of that debate. I think Bernie Sanders does a great job on income inequality and that whole conversation. But, you know, this process argument about
she misrepresented
who's giving money to
the
the
views
campaign
about
isn't an
healthcare.
argument that is going to win a primary.
All right. Thank you both very
Well,
much.
in that
We'll
debate,
have
she
you back.
misrepresented it, but we can get.
We'll
all right,
have
we
you
can get to
both
that another
back. I
time.
know there is a lot more to talk about health care, its own separate topic.